talked a little bit about becoming your own bank, and we talked about what to do and how you would use your experience to get started with that, taking care of any credits or debt or anything that um, you had blocking your way from becoming your own personal bank, and also to get in the mentality of becoming a bank. And then we talked about how banks kind of, they sort of prey on us and take our money in both illegal ways and legal ways as sort of their business model, right? They get fined, but they still do it. They continue to do it because it's profitable for them. So if you become your own bank, you can avoid those things. So, in the first episode of our discussion there, you had talked about how you paid off your house and had used your stack for paying for other things with your family. So, um, and you've been building up your stack. And so how gradual has that process been for building your stack back up?
Well, that right there has been a very slow and painful process. So what happened was back in 2000, I don't know, I'll say 2011, 2012 timeframe, when the market hit a decent price. Now you got to remember, man, I've been stacking since I was a kid, and my dad was stacking forever too. So he was getting silver at $4 an ounce, $5 an ounce. So when it hit $50 an ounce, I could hear in the back of my head, I could hear him saying, "If you don't sell it, I'm gonna come back from the grave and beat your rear end." I could hear him say that. So I sold everything I had except for a couple of select pieces. And the pieces that meant something to me emotionally, I kept, but everything else got sold. And once we had that money, we paid it all off, paid off the house and a few other credit cards and stuff, and we became debt free, like truly debt free. And what we did was any money that we had extra, we set aside, and we were waiting for the market to actually drop down again. So as the markets would drop, we would actually go out and make physical purchases of silver. And over the years, as the markets keep dropping down, we actually depleted that fund. So now I'm actually working way more hours, twice as much as I normally would, in order to slowly get my stat brought back up. Now, mind you, in 8 years, we have accumulated quite a bit with my job and everything, and my wife. So between the two of us, because she is on board, and that's another thing people got to realize. If you have a spouse, they need to be on board, because if not, you're not going to be successful, especially trying to be your own bank. So if your spouse is on board, you both can work and make everything exponentially better. So growing your stack, even after you sell it off, can be easy if you just do it in the right order.
Mhm. And being debt free definitely helps, I'm sure. One of the things, I mean, some of the people listening to this, they might not have ever thought about becoming their own bank. So can you explain to me a little bit about how you felt and about how your life changed when you actually did pay off your house and got out of debt? What was that like?
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, what was that like?
So that was actually, to me, best way to describe it is hold your breath and go underwater. Stay there as long as you can. And when you think you can't stay there any longer, stay for a few more seconds. And right before you pass out, come up and take a deep breath of air. That is what it felt like. That is the best analogy I can give anybody. That's how good it felt. That's the freedom I felt. My wife and I, we had nothing to worry about. We had a beautiful baby boy at that time. I mean, everything we needed was paid for. Everything. We had no bills. Even if the world was to collapse, only thing we had to worry about was groceries. And even then, we grew our own garden. So, only thing after that was just basic necessities. When you can reach that level of independence, you don't have to rely on anybody for anything. That is what being your own bank is about.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's really powerful stuff. I love that analogy that you used too, by the way. I've always felt like every time when I don't have any more student loan debt, but when I did, and when I had credit card debt and stuff like that, I always felt like it was just this weight on my shoulders, and you know, the earnings that I get from my work, like, you know, somebody else is taking a cut and can never really get ahead. And sounds to me like you're describing the other end of that feeling, right? Like you don't have this weight on you anymore, and you have, you know, this room to feel free to live, to grow, and to know that you're taken care of by being your own bank. So that's really incredible. That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
So, let's say someone pays off all their debts, and they maybe set aside a little bit of fiat to make sure that, you know, if there's any sudden emergency that has to be paid off with fiat, you know, they wouldn't have to turn around and sell their silver, although that is an option, as you explained. So, what are some of the other conditions and requirements that you would say for becoming your own bank? What are some other things that people need to be aware of and to do?
Well, one of the biggest things they need to be aware of, they need a place to store everything. Like me, I have a very high-end gun safe. I have security systems. I have firearms. I have dogs. I have a lot of things that protect my family and my house and my precious metals. Now, do I store all my precious metals on me in my house? No. Some of my stuff sits in a vault hundreds of miles away, and some people may say that's bad, but some of the bigger stuff I need to keep away because of the quantity of it. And if I need to liquidate that portion of my stack, all I got to do is pick up a phone and say, hey, I need to liquidate X amount of stuff. And within 2 days or so, I get a check in the, across my bank account that says, hey, you have money. So that's something people need to realize. Another thing is when people are stacking, they need to always keep a record of what they stack. Let's say, for example, today you go out and you buy a piece for $10. Just for example, easy numbers. And then tomorrow the market hits $15, but yet you're like, I need to go buy something. So you look and see what you sold, what you bought a particular piece for, and you know which one it is, and you go, okay, I'm going to sell this one for X amount of dollars, and you're going to get some extra currency off of it. Well, guess what? Well, you just got an extra $5 off of that piece of silver you bought for $10 6 months ago. So you actually made interest on your silver, and I put that in quotations, but the inflation, silver kept up with it. So in reality, this goes back to being your own bank, your own savings account. So now you can buy what you need to buy without actually going to the bank and saying, hey, wow, they took out X amount of dollars every month, and I don't have as much in there as I thought I did. So it helps cover some of those premiums you were talking about in the last video. So when you think about it, your premiums can be covered. And on top of that, a lot of silver dealers, silver collectors or stackers, we sell to each other. So when we sell to each other, we actually cut out a lot of those premiums that we would normally pay. So that's another option people got to look at. Like Facebook, I can guarantee you right now, if you were to put, say, 100 ounces of silver on a silver forum in Facebook, before you get up in the morning, every bit of it will be sold. And you might not even get the listing done before every bit of it's sold, and the money's already in your PayPal account or whatever account you have. And all you got to do is just mail it off. That's how quick it is. So the argument that people says, well, it takes time to sell it. Their arguments, man, are invalid. You could literally sell 1,000 ounces of silver in a matter of maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. It just depends on how you do it.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. So you talked about security, right? Security measures in place. Banks have those. So if you're going to become your own bank, you've got to have security. You talked about keeping a record, a ledger of all of your purchases, right? All the information. Obviously, banks keep a record of every transaction. And if you want to be your own bank, you're going to have to do that too. And then you talked about dealing with other people, right? Other stackers. And, you know, commercial banks, they deal with the Fed and they deal with other commercial banks as well. So, I mean, I kind of look at that as us individuals. If we want to be our own banks, we can go ahead and deal with other individual banks like that. As you mentioned, there are a lot of platforms and forums and things like that where people can go and to get around some of the very common, typical pushback points that you hear about, you know, uh, silver being difficult to sell, difficult to liquidate, difficult, you know, with premiums and things like that. So with that though, do you stack like different stuff? Like I've seen on we both like silver 5150, and I've seen on his channel he has actually some fractional pieces of silver, and a lot of people have 1 ounce coins, and then there's bigger stuff. You get into 5 ounce pieces, 10 ounce pieces. uh, I have half kilos and kilos, and then there's 100 ounce bars and 1,000 ounce bars and stuff. So would you recommend, once again, to yourself, if you had all the knowledge and you're talking to a younger silver conundrum, would you say, hey, it's important to diversify the fractions or the quantities of different types of bullion? Is that important?
Yes, absolutely, 100% without a doubt important. And here's why. So let's just say I take 100 ounces of silver to Joe Blow across the street and say, hey, can you afford this 100 ounces? He says no. You're going to have a hard time trying to sell 100 ounces of silver to one individual person. But if you have it broke down in 1 ounce portions or 1 ounce increments or half-ounce increments, that is easier to sell to individuals over a broad spectrum. Now you just opened your market up to every single person instead of one or two people. So I would definitely say, listen, conundrum, you need to literally stack diversity. Half ounce, quarter ounce, kilos, 100 ounce, just go from top to bottom. And if you can, and if you have the room, I would definitely stack the 1 ouncers preferably, because they are the easiest thing to liquidate across any market across the board.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really important, and I have heard that on a lot of stacking channels before too, but definitely worth reiterating. And a lot of, I mean, obviously, what you pay for your silver, that is important, and it's great to find deals. We don't want to get ripped off, right? Because that means that we're potentially paying more for something, and then that means that we're going to be able to get less silver. But I feel like sometimes a little bit, sometimes you know, people focus a little bit too much on getting good deals, or you know what the buy-in price. I've heard you say before, like anything for under $30 an ounce, you're not even really thinking about it. It's all basically the same, right? And I think
That's right.
it is important to, yeah, it's important to dollar cost average. I used to do it after every single purchase, but I was like, I kind of know now, like that I've been doing it after every single purchase. I can kind of just do the math in my head and get a general idea. So now I do it at the end of every year or so. Maybe I should do it a little more often, but like I said before, I'm in the mentality now of, you know, I'm just trading 30 pieces of fake money, play money, for, you know, one piece of real money. So it's not that big of a concern for me, actually, right? So
I
um
agree.
yeah, so let's say now, when you when you go to a commercial bank, you do have to sometimes go like to the ATM or whatever and withdraw some currency, right? So when or under what circumstances do you tend to withdraw from your own bank? Like when do you sell your silver? What kind of things do you sell it for? Just as somebody who does it, right? This is again, we're not telling people what to do, but just you're your own bank already. So what kind of circumstances do you sell silver under?
All right. I can use one that I've used in the past. So when my wife and I had our first son, what happened with us was the medical bills, because of the whole, I hate to say it, but because of the Obamacare, the way it affected us, it darn near devastated us financially. So what we had to do was, because the insurance didn't cover a lot of things that we had, and I made too much money to qualify for the Obamacare stuff, we actually had to sell off a portion of my stack before in order to actually cover the medical bills in order to have my son delivered, even though we did have insurance. So I would definitely say medical bills is one of those things, like, again, birthing is one of those things that we sold part of our stack for. Now, it's going to be different for every individual because somebody might have a vehicle issue where their whole vehicle blows up and they got to get a new one. And they got to come out of pocket $2,000 or $3,000 for a down payment. So that could be an issue for them. That could be a time to sell. Somebody might want to buy a house. Well, guess what? If they have the stack there, they can take enough of that stack to put the down payment for their house. People want to start businesses. They can take a portion of their stack and liquidate it to be their own bank to finance their own startup capital. So there are very, very vast reasons why you sell your silver. But the thing is, it's all up to the individual person of what a good reason is.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I'm glad you said that, like, you know, it depends on individual circumstances and things like that. Because, like, I mean, a lot of people that are in this silver stacking community, a lot of them are in the United States. So they're facing like the same, or not the same, but very similar circumstances, like with healthcare and things like that. But there are also folks from Europe, and you know, I'm over here in Korea, and most other countries have a universal healthcare system. Like, so, like when my kids were born, uh, you know, we really didn't have any issues. I mean, actually, my wife had some serious like complications. She's okay and everything like that, but like I felt like if we were in the States, it might have ended up costing a whole lot more. But because we have that universal healthcare system, you know, that wasn't a concern. Now there are other concerns. There are other you know, issues that I face in terms of finances that people in the States may not face. And also, like, just another pretty big example, you know, North Korea is real close by. So, like, there's totally different circumstances. And
Absolutely.
yeah, those are things that like everybody has to think about, you know. So it's really good that you point out that you know what you're withdrawing from your own bank for. It really depends on you know your personal situation, and that's another reason why we don't try to like give some kind of one size fits all advice is because like it's too complicated, right? Like I said in the first episode, it sounds intuitive, sounds easy, becoming your own bank, but it's a little more complicated than that, and so that's why we're talking. And I think you bring up a really good point there. So now let's say you had a really small expense that wasn't a huge thing. Um, would you be okay to get into debt for like a month, maybe on your credit card or something, instead of selling silver?
If it's under, okay, so I can use again another personal experience.
Mm,
So last week I hit a pothole, ripped out the brakes in the front end of my vehicle. $1,100 worth of damage. I put it on my credit card. Why? Because I can pay that off in about a month. No big deal. Do I buy silver still? No. So instead of going towards my silver stacking, I put that money towards my credit card to get it paid off really quick. So I give myself a limit. If it's $1,500 or even 2,000, I would really say, or less, yeah, I'd put it on a credit card in a heartbeat. Won't even think twice about it. But if it's anything substantial, well, again, that's perspective. $2,000 could be substantial to some people. $1,000 could be substantial to some people. But in my circumstance, anything $2,000 and under, I don't even blink an eyelash to put it on a credit card because it'll be paid off in about a month, maybe a month and a half at the most.
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good example, because, you know, I personally, because I was in debt before and it took me so long to get out from under it, and I you just looked at debt and credit and stuff as evil. It's you know, and I still kind of feel that way, but like it's just I don't want to have it at all. You know what I mean? Like if I use my credit card because there's some like points or bonus or whatever, I get home, I pay it off immediately. But Silver 5150 was talking. He made a video about how he basically used credit to leverage some of his silver purchases because he believes that that's a good price point for him to buy in at. So even with the interest that he would incur with that, he felt like using that line of credit was going to be beneficial to him in the long run. And again, that's his circumstances and that's what he does. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That was his decision. But the reason I bring up that story is it just made me think a little bit differently about credit after listening to how he used it, right? So, and also just hearing your story there, if you're able to pay it off in a month or so, that decision, because everything we do or don't do, there's a trade-off, right? So if you're to sell your silver to fix your vehicle, right, then what if you sell that silver and then the spot price jumps as it has been increasing recently, right? Um,
Yep.
versus you take out a little bit of credit, you get in debt that you know that you can comfortably pay off within a very short period of time. That is a safer option than liquidating silver, which might increase in value over time. So we talked earlier about how bad debt is and all that stuff, but it still plays a role when you're operating as your own bank. And so people should be aware of that as well. It does have a place and it can actually save you money and allow you to hang on to more of your silver reserve. So that's a really good point there.
All right, that's going to do it for part 2 of this first episode on becoming your own bank. The third and final part of this episode will be released next week over on Expat Stacker's channel, so stay tuned for that. As always, we hope you enjoyed the discussion between Silver Conundrum and I, and we'll catch you next time.